Honorable G.J. Nyomal Pereira, Deputy Minister of External Affairs of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ranjit Gunawardena, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Power, Sri Lanka, Mr. Maruf Raza, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers for inviting me to address the inaugural session of the 4th Asia Energy Summit Security Summit on fostering energy security partnership in Asia. This is a commendable initiative taken by the Independent Power Producers Association of India. I am delighted to be able to make a presentation or speak to you on energy cooperation between India and Sri Lanka. Our relationship dates back to time immemorial, and the rich legacy of cultural, religious, linguistic interaction provides a strong underpinning for a modern, forward-looking relationship that covers a wide gamut of activities. The demand for energy is growing at an incremental pace all over the world. India is the 4th largest consumer of energy after China, USA, and the Russian Federation. On the other hand, Sri Lanka is fast emerging as an important consumer of energy. In the post-conflict period, the Sri Lankan economy has expanded considerably. As its economy grows and the standards of living rise, there is a corresponding growth in the demand for energy. Energy costs can be of crucial importance in energy-intensive industries such as chemicals, aluminium, cement, iron and steel, paper, glass, and the petroleum sector, particularly where goods are traded internationally. As per the World Energy Outlook 2013, energy-intensive sectors worldwide account for around 1/5 of the industrial value, 1/4 of the industrial requirement, and 70% of the industrial energy use. The unabated demand for energy has resulted in sources of energy coming under increasing strain the world over. Planning for assured access to energy is a vital component of national policy and has also impacted the conduct of international relations and the realization of foreign policy objectives. In the context of India-Sri Lanka relations, engagement across the board in the energy sector constitutes an important pillar of bilateral cooperation. Presently, conventional sources of energy continue to be the mainstay of the economies of both India and Sri Lanka. In the power generation sector, a joint venture agreement was signed between India's National Thermal Power Corporation NTPC and Sri Lanka's Ceylon Electricity Board CEB in September 2011 for implementing a 500 megawatt Sampur coal power project in eastern Trincomalee, and a joint venture company, the Trincomalee Power Corporation Limited TPCL, was set up. All necessary agreements related to the Sampur coal power plant was signed in October 2013 by officials of the government of Sri Lanka and their counterparts from India. These agreements were signed in the presence of the Honorable Minister of External Affairs of India, Sri Salman Khurshid, and the Honorable Minister of Economic Development of Sri Lanka, Mr. Basil Rajapaksa. The Honorable Ministers of Power and Energy, External Affairs, and Investment Promotion of Sri Lanka also witnessed the signing of these landmark agreements. India has also extended a line of credit amounting to $200 million towards various aspects of this project. TPCL, in addition, would raise over $400 million through commercial loans for the project. A 240-kilometer long 220 kV transmission line would be laid from Sampur to the grid substation at Vayangoda to connect the power plant to the national grid. TPCL would undertake the construction of the line from Sampur to Habarana, and with the Habarana-Vayangoda segment being constructed with Japanese assistance. it has been estimated that the power plant would be linked to the national grid by 2017. The linking of power generation to the national grid would minimize the CEB's dependence on purchasing power from private suppliers. The Sampur coal power project has the distinction of being one of the largest single Indian-assisted projects to be implemented in Sri Lanka. Once this power plant is fully operational, it would add 500 megawatts to the national grid. This is expected to reduce the cost of electricity and increase supply to cater to the rising electricity demand driven by rapid economic development. The completion of this project and its integration into the power grid would also result in an opportunity for Sri Lanka to export power to India. I would like to stress that NTPC, who is executing the project on the Indian side, is a premier public sector unit which has achieved stellar successes in setting up power projects in India and abroad. NTPC has an installed capacity of 42,454 megawatts in India and an under construction capacity of around 20,000 megawatts. NTPC's expertise, backed and supported by its own fully trained technical teams, would help develop an efficient, reliable and modern state-of-the-art power plant which would be seen by others as a model. The project has been backed by sound technical specifications facilitating high efficiency, and it covers the environmental aspect fully. An environmental impact study has been conducted and the report in this regard will be submitted shortly. It may be mentioned that concern for the environment has been integral to NTPC's growth strategies, which are driven by its environment vision of going higher on generation, lowering GHG intensity. Ladies and gentlemen, there have been unwarranted and motivated criticisms in some sections of the local media, including one scurrilous report in a newspaper today about the Sampur power plant. It is surprising that there are some who are responsible for the delay in the signing of the agreements and now continue to undermine the project by labeling baseless allegations for reasons best known to them. I am confident that this project will be a landmark of bilateral cooperation in the energy sector and will add substantially to Sri Lanka's power generation capacity. Moreover, this project has been crafted in order to take into account best practices in the region and beyond, and also learn from mistakes made in setting up similar power projects in Sri Lanka and the region. And those of you who live here know exactly what I am referring to. It will be ensured that state-of-the-art machinery and equipment are installed in the plant through an open and transparent international tendering process. I am sanguine that once the power plant is completed, it will be a model for other such plants in the country and will silence those that are making baseless allegations. As regards the resettlement of people who have been displaced from the area allocated to the power plant, we will provide proper housing under our flagship housing project being executed by the Government of India, involving construction of 50,000 houses mainly in the northern and eastern provinces of Sri Lanka. We have been informed by the Sri Lankan authorities that based on survey records, only 7 families have been displaced from the area where the power plant will be built in Sampur. India's consistent policy has been to share the benefits of its development process and its technical expertise with friendly countries, particularly in its neighborhood. This project has the potential of not only addressing Sri Lanka's energy needs, but also contribute towards trade in power between our two countries, a subject that I will address the later part of my speech. In the petroleum sector, the partnership between India and Sri Lanka crystallized when an MOU was signed in June 2002 between Ceylon Petroleum Corporation (CPC) and the Indian Oil Corporation Limited under the auspices of both the governments. The first major overseas commercial venture of IOC commenced in August 2002 with the incorporation of Lanka IOC Private Limited. Lanka IOC has made phased investments to provide world-class quality petroleum products and services to the people of Sri Lanka. It is the only private oil company that operates retail petrol and diesel stations in Sri Lanka, apart from the government-owned Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. Lanka IOC is ranked number 1 among the listed energy companies in Sri Lanka. It has also contributed to development of infrastructure in this important sector. Its major facilities include an oil terminal in Trincomalee and an 18,000 tons per annum capacity lubricants blending plant and state-of-the-art fuels and lubricants testing plant also in Trincomalee. The Trincomalee oil tank farms operated by Lanka IOC consists of 99 tanks, jetties, pipelines, etc. The oil tank farm has a capacity of 12,000 kiloliters. Currently, only 15 of these tanks are operational, but Lanka IOC has made a proposal to the government of Sri Lanka to develop the remaining tanks under a suitable joint venture arrangement. In the field of oil and gas exploration, there have been regular discussions between ONGC Videsh, OVL, another premier Indian public sector unit, and the government of Sri Lanka. KN Lanka, a wholly owned subsidiary of KN India, has struck gas in 2 wells in the Mannar Basin in Sri Lanka during the first phase of the drilling program. KN Lanka has announced that they would enter the second phase of their operation. Further drilling will be required to establish commercial viability. In the second round of licensing for offshore oil blocks, opened on the 7th of March last year, KN India had bid for one of the blocks in the Mannar Basin and has won that bid. I understand that an agreement for the block will be concluded shortly. We continue to evince interest in offshore exploration and in assisting Sri Lanka in augmenting its oil refining capacity. In the new and renewable energy sector, India and Sri Lanka are actively discussing cooperation. During the 8th session of the India-Sri Lanka Joint Commission held in New Delhi in January 2013, both sides agreed to explore cooperation in the field of new and renewable forms of energy, including through greater cooperation between the public and private sector entities of both the countries. During the visit of Secretary Treasury of Sri Lanka to India in April 2013, discussions took place for cooperation in wind and solar energy between government agencies of both the countries. During the same session of the Joint Commission, it was also agreed to consider Indian proposals regarding renewable energy projects of aggregate capacity of 15 megawatts using biomass fuel, provided such projects conform to relevant Sri Lankan legislation. Sri Lanka possesses huge potential for hitherto untapped wind and solar energy. Indian companies in the wind, solar and biomass energy sectors like Suzlon and Ankur Scientific Energy Technologies are already present in Sri Lanka, and there is scope for greater cooperation between public and private sector entities of both the countries in the fields of capacity building, technical and consultancy assistance, and sourcing of equipment. We hope to enhance cooperation in this important sector, which is environment friendly and makes use of green technology. India and Sri Lanka have an official dialogue on the issue of peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and both sides have reaffirmed the commitment to strengthen bilateral cooperation in the uses of civil nuclear technology for peaceful purposes for the mutual benefit of the people of both the countries. An area of great promise is the area of trade in energy between the two countries. Experts believe that countries can reduce the impact of higher prices by promoting more efficient, competitive and interconnected energy markets. Energy trade between India and some of its neighbors like Bhutan, Nepal and Bangladesh has become a reality. There are ongoing discussions with Pakistan for supply of electricity as well as gas and refined petroleum products. It has been analyzed that cross-border power purchase will produce tangible benefits, including effective utilization of natural resources, increase in reliability of power, benefits from seasonal differential demands, and large-scale transformation in sectors contributing to economic growth. India and Sri Lanka have been discussing the possibility of trading in energy, keeping in mind the present generating capacity as well as patterns of power consumption in Sri Lanka as well as India. There is agreement on both sides to move ahead with the interconnectivity of our electricity grids. The minutes of the last meeting of the Joint Commission I referred to earlier refers to this possibility. Such an intergrid connectivity will enhance the viability of power investments in Sri Lanka, in addition to enhancing the overall stability of the Sri Lankan grid due to the much larger demand base. The prospects for trading of electricity between India and Sri Lanka are enhanced by the fact that the peak hours between the two countries are different. Export of power would also help address the trade imbalance of Sri Lanka vis-à-vis India, while catering to the growing power requirement of southern India, thereby creating a win-win situation for both the countries. The uneven spatial distribution of natural resources in South Asia is an imperative for regional cooperation in the energy sector. This is vital for emerging economies to maintain sustainable growth. Lack of sustainable power resources or neglect of development of the same is a risk which neither India nor Sri Lanka can take. I am certain that policymakers in both countries, realizing the existing potential, will ensure that cooperation in this vital field will be further enhanced. Energy diplomacy has become the new crucible in international relations, and neighbors like India and Sri Lanka are poised to take full advantage of the opportunities that arise. With these words, again, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me and would like to wish all of you participating in the summit all success in your deliberations. Thank you.